Turf Talk with Drew Miller.
What an incredible podcast with Mr. Appelfeller of Austin FC. It truly was such a great opportunity for our students to learn about someone who's so passionate about his job and truly cares so much about where our industry is going and how his career shows what can be possible if you pursue what you're passionate about and what you love. We discussed the development of the new state-of-the-art facility for Austin FC, not only their stadium, which has the new platinum paspalum on their natural grass playing surface, but also their training facility. We discussed the different aspects that he took place in from when he moved from the Columbus team that was an extension team to Austin. He was able to be a part of the development of the stadium, being a part of the process of making decisions, whether it was for facilities or other ideas that came into effect when he discusses his moving forward past the design and construction phase. He discusses the insane fan atmosphere that it's going to create, but also how difficult it's truly going to be to grow this seashore paspalum in a stadium that really truly was never meant to grow grass. So it truly was an honor to discuss all the different aspects of his job and what he's doing now, his focus is moving forward, and sort of discovering what that next step is, transitioning back into what a sports turf manager does on a day-to-day basis. Another great part of this podcast is when he discusses his new team and the way that he developed the different ways to create a family-like atmosphere where everyone truly can be trusted and will put forth their best effort at all times in order to create a successful crew and team. We really cannot thank him enough for the time. It truly was a phenomenal learning experience for our students, and we really hope you enjoyed this episode of Tiger Turf Talk. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 36th episode of Tiger Turf Talk. I'm your host, Drew Miller. We have a phenomenal guest on today. Really exciting stuff going on. We have the Senior Director of Grounds of Austin FC, Mr. Weston Appelfeller. Got it right. All right. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Hopefully I can live up to that billing. So I appreciate that. So.
No, of course. So we actually met for the first time at STMA. I think it was 2020. I can't tell with COVID, but I think it was 2020 down in West Palm Beach, correct? Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yep.
We were both a part of the inaugural class of the Pioneers in the Field for Pioneer Athletics, if I remember that correctly, right?
Yeah.
I remember sitting there and talking with you and how you were starting off years before the actual stadium for Austin FC was even constructed. Could you sort of talk about what that transition was sort of like for you to come in beforehand and have such a key role in the development of what the stadium is now as you're sitting there in it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's come full circle now as I sit here and talk to you, from like the third floor of looking down over the field. So, so beginning in 2019, I was named Senior Director for Austin FC, which was, fantastic. We didn't put sod into the stadium until the end of October of 2020. So for, a good, 20 some months, I was a head groundskeeper without grass, which is fantastic. And if anybody could ever get that role, that was a good first year. The second year got a little busy with construction and obviously, things change and you get back into the routine of what it is to be a sports turf groundskeeper. It was, the best time of my entire career, the most rewarding time of my entire career, also the most frustrating time of my entire career, because the construction process is not for everyone. I found that out pretty quick. And while, there's the greatest rewards come with it, there's also the most stress and the most sleepless nights that a person could possibly have. So it is absolutely a phenomenal experience. I am so happy that it's almost completely over. And I just want to get back in the routine of being a normal groundskeeper again. So.
And it's incredible what you've done. And one of the biggest aspects of that 20 months, I believe I read an article. I looked you up after I met you. And I read an article about how you were doing rigorous testing on different types of turf grass and what was going to be sort of that selection of the specific turf you were going to go with sort of all the different things that come with an MLS stadium. You were just discussing how you have the growth lights on right now. There are different maybe challenges you face compared to, say, a football stadium. What was it like to play that key role in sort of running those different tests and making that selection that you have made for your turf?
Yeah, good question. So I think before I start into this, I should probably give you a little bit of background on what we actually have here and why it's so difficult to grow grass in Austin, Texas, which most people wouldn't say that here, Austin, Texas, and they think it's great to grow grass. So our stadium design, and for those that have seen it, great. For those that haven't, and it's worth at least taking a look at so you understand what I'm talking about when I say this. Our stadium design is fan friendly. Austin has a lot of heat in the summer, and we wanted to protect the fans. And so with that, we put a roof over top of every seat in the place. In fact, it overhangs the east and the west side front row seat by 8 feet and the north and south by 16 feet, which means on the north and south end, we have 5 feet of actual natural grass that is underneath our roof and our canopy. And so early on in the process and the design, seeing that come to fruition, made us realize that we need something that is better in the shade than most grasses. And C4 grasses, they all pretty much suck in the shade. Anything that's warm season, is not the greatest. And so, and looking and reaching out to people to talk to try to research the entire thing was, I've become very quickly drawn to the people that have the retractable roofs. And so a lot of those are baseball stadiums, Houston Astros, or, the Arizona Diamondbacks when they had grass, or the Miami Marlins. And what those guys said to me, meant a lot. And, a real close friend of mine, Dan Bergstrom, who's at the Houston Dynamo, who used to be with the Astros, told me early on I should look at a grass called Platinum TE Seashore Paspalum. And the advice he offered me was, when you talk to all these people, don't let somebody who's never grown grass in the shade tell you how you should grow grass in the shade, because it's an experience like none other. And I've realized that I'm in a small fraternity of people now that I've tried to do it for 7 months. And so with that said, we started looking at different samples, different grasses, and this is what the original question was, coming back to it, is the rigorous testing. I don't know how rigorous it was. I had plots of grass growing in the backside of an office building in North Austin. At one point, I think I had 9 of them. But anything from Tahoma to Latitude to Tiftoff to several of just the Platinum Paspalum. And, after I started testing them and looking at them a little bit, it became more of a talking point than anything. And so as, our higher ups were coming through the office, they'd see, these grasses grown out back. Well, eventually they made their way inside, and I got SGL, the grow light company, sent me over one lamp to use. And so we had grass growing in the office. And at one point there was grass growing in a meeting room. And it just made people aware that, what we were doing, grass meant something. As the architects and the project managers and everything come in, they would see, that we were trying different things. And I say we, at that point, it was very much me. But in the mentality of saying we is part of it. But, it became that paspalum was the choice. And every person that I talked to that was in one of those domed stadiums, told me that they've all grown Bermuda and the paspalum was the only option I had. And I took that to heart, and we decided somewhere in the middle of 2019 that we would go with platinum paspalum. So
you were sort of talking about how, again, it's a fan-friendly stadium. Did you ever have any say other than the turf and obviously, I mean, the subgrade and everything that went into it? Were you ever in discussions with, hey, this is a little much, this is overhanging on my field? It very rarely that is a thing in any stadium, were there any other aspects that you had to say in, maybe sort of a shop space for where you work with your staff and everything? And what was that sort of experience like? Because a lot of turf managers don't really get to have that experience. And like you said, 20 months is a pretty long time before that install process started. What were some of those meetings like, and how did that sort of play a role in your day-to-day work for that time frame?
yeah, I mean, part of the reason I'm in Austin is because I have an ownership group that treats me like I'm, quite frankly, not a groundskeeper. They involve me in a lot of decisions that I probably shouldn't be involved in, but it's great to be part of it. So I was in every construction meeting, whether they were talking about grass or they were talking about locker rooms or suites or anything. I sat in all of them in case the topic of grass would come up for even 2 to 3 minutes. But in that process, they also, took me around to these different training facilities and different stadiums to check them out and see things. And I become really close friends with some of the architects and the project managers and that sort of thing. And in that process, in the ownership group, and it made it easier to, ask for things that I needed or work on things that, were important to us. And so, when you talk about it, the field is one thing that, we were able to make a little bit of a difference on, I feel like, and what would have went in here had I not been part of the process. But, the shop is another one, and at the stadium here, we have a very basic shop. There's nothing too fancy about it. But at the training facility, our ownership group spent a lot of money to take care of us and make sure that we have a group or a building that our group can call home. We have offices in there, we have a kitchen in there, we have showers in there, we have laundry in there, we have everything that, we could live out of if we needed to at any point. And had I not been involved early on, I don't think that would have happened. I'm very appreciative for everything we have. But, I think that's the experiences. Now, looking forward to it, our architect, which is Gensler out of LA, now understands what a groundskeeper needs when they put these places together. They had just come off of the LAFC building, which is an unbelievable, phenomenal stadium and training facility. But I can honestly say our facilities, as far as where we house our groundskeepers, if not, the fields themselves, their fields are great. I'm not going to say that our fields are any better than theirs because they're probably not. But, I've seen their training grounds and where they have for their groundskeeper space, and ours is better than that. And my only hope is now that when they go forward and they construct other places and design other places, that now the next one will be better than ours, because they have that experience now of working with a groundskeeper. Outside of that, I mean, there's little things here and there that I may have say in. I'm not sure, if they listen to me or not. But when it comes to the actual roof itself and the canopy, I think we're surprised that I wasn't arguing against it. I wanted the challenge of seeing if we could make it successful. But fan experience is more important than what anything I say when it comes to making sure we have a successful club. So we'll make the grass grow and do everything we can on that side of it.
I love how you're sort of talking about setting that standard of the next level of architecture. For, again, these are popping up all over the country when it comes to MLS. Am I wrong in saying that?
Oh, you're right. We have 3 new stadiums opening up in the next 2 months. So
yeah,
FC Cincinnati opens up.
Cincinnati.
FC Cincinnati opens up this weekend. We open up next month, and then Columbus opens up the month after us, or a couple weeks after us, and then Nashville's next year, and St. Louis is a couple years away. And so, there's all kinds of new stadiums going in everywhere. So
Audi was just put in DC a year ago or 2. But yeah, and I think that's incredible, and hopefully moving forward with that. Um, is there anything, whether it's the training facility, maybe what you were just talking about, that you sort of feel like you put your stamp on it? Sort of like, this is what my 2 cents was that made a huge impact on what our facilities are and the stadium is now, sort of in the final plans slash construction phase.
Um, yeah, maybe. I'd say the training facility, our building out there is nice, and that's probably the stamp of what we got accomplished or what we feel like we got accomplished. Our fields are nice. At the training facility, that facility is phenomenal. The they took what we did at the stadium and they matched it out there. So we have the same sand profile out there. We have the same grass out there. Our academy kids have the exact same root zone out there as what we have at the stadium. And, to put that effort into, researching and talking with everybody and finding the right, root zone and everything that goes along with that, and then to have them transfer that over and want to use it at our training facility, as well. I'd say if there was a stamp to be made, I would say it was probably the work on the training facility. I think the stadium's kind of its own, bag of worms, for a lack of better way of putting it. It's just such a, unique experience here that, the design drove what the stadium is, and then we just kind of fit into it. So.
That's awesome. Something that recently the STMA has been highlighting it with a couple articles and a couple videos. What are the big things that comes with, again, you said you had no grass for 20 months, is that preparation once you made the selection, when you are talking to the farm at Scottsdale, what were you focusing on when it comes to the cultural practices at the sod farm so that it was prepared to move into Austin?
So, I mean, the decision with paspalum made it extremely hard to pick out a sod farm for several reasons. One, there's not many of them that have it, and the ones that do have it are literally, the best of the best. And none of them are close. So we knew we were going to have to transport a lot of grass across, state lines for the most part, and we tried to, research it and which one to go with and all that. And we finally settled on the farm out in Scottsdale, basically because of what they could do for us. They had so much open land that, when we met with them and went out there, they offered to, lay down a matching sand is what we were going to use on our root zone, and then grow the sprigs into it and then maintain it however, we desired. So, Jay and Joe and the group that's out at Scottsdale, they laid down 1.25 inches of root zone. They sprigged into it, and then for 6 months they the best weather you could possibly have in the world to grow paspalum in. They grew our sod. They mowed it pretty much daily. They fertilized it as needed. They put some fungicides on it. They top dressed it when we asked them to top dress it. They did everything, and then we worked extremely close with them on babying it all the way to Austin. And, that's a long process and some refrigerated trucks. And, the first couple of days we were pretty stressed out, and we had some rolls that were a little heated up, but they were able to tighten up the turnaround times and getting cut and to getting it laid. And by the time we got to the stadium, the sod was coming off the truck, and the night it laid, I don't know that I could ever have it looking as good as what it did that night. So, that group really, really did everything that we asked and more. And we couldn't be more thankful for what they did for us for that whole 6-month period and setting us up to hopefully be successful.
Absolutely. You were sort of talking about this process already a little bit. If you could sort of explain it to the kids. And I was lucky enough to have this opportunity in Pittsburgh when I used to work for the Steelers to be a part of that sort of process on the Pittsburgh end of it, where it arrives and we moved it out. Could you sort of go through the process? Also, there was a video sort of showing it, and I'm going to show the kids next week. You were talking about how you felt you were adopting a child sort of when you were getting the rolls up ready to move. Could you sort of explain that process and what it was sort of like for you to finally sort of have that turf back in your life in a sense, making that transition back to being a sports turf manager?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my kids would be jealous of, the new adopted kid if that's the case. But no, that
Just tell them the ownership group is spending a lot of money on it and that it's way more expensive. So that's why.
yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, no, I mean, the whole last year was just a blur. We had, we started off great and then we hit COVID and everything went, from, me growing grass in trays at my house to, all of a sudden I'm driving, 7 trays of grass home and next thing I look out and those are all dead because I just don't care anymore. And I'm talking on the phone and ordering equipment and, getting everything set up out in Arizona. And then, you're flying out to Arizona a couple of times and looking at that before I realized it, we were installing, the field. And at that point, I believe, I was, the only one that was, still, or the only one on our staff. So, it was bouncing back and forth between both construction sites and trying to make sure everything's going all right and hiring people and all of that. So it was just a whirlwind of events. But yeah, I mean, the whole process of growing that sod and finally seeing it out in the desert as we were ready to, pick it up and bring it here was extremely emotional and, exciting and nervous. And, you just felt everything at the same time all coming together. So, yeah, it's an experience I hope everybody gets to enjoy once. If they want to do it twice or 3 times, then great. But now it's very rewarding to see it in, and, it's back to the stresses of trying to manage it and work around events and all of that sort of thing, which is rewarding in itself. So it's just a change. I got used to having weekends off, which was great. And now, every weekend I'm heading to the stadium to mow or move some lights or, just check on things and make sure everything's going good. And, here in another month, we have games starting. So, every weekend's pretty much occupied with that then. So it's just a change and exciting. And, but I'm sad to see the construction process go, but excited to see it go as well. So.
Absolutely. Hopefully we can do without the pandemic portion of that, again,
Hopefully, yeah.
You sort of touched base on it. You were talking about how, again, you weren't really too worried about the growing of the trays anymore. You were buying equipment. There were a lot of major decisions for the moving forward process. Equipment, your staff, plans for nutrient management plan, all the different aspects of what's coming next. What was it that you were focusing on when you were making those decisions, and how did you end up with, say you went with John Deere or Toro, different, whatever it is that you went with? What were those decisions like for you during that process, and how you've arrived at today, sort of?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about being here so early was making all the relationships on the equipment side, and so in the grass side and all that. So making the decisions early made it easy to be able to focus on what needed to be focused on late. And so I wasn't going to buy any products for a year or 2, right? But I was meeting with every fertilizer distributor down here and having, quite frankly, getting bought lunch, which was great. But
always make sure they do that. You also might want to buy a year's supply of gas because everybody's freaking out.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But in the equipment people and all that. So we had the grass decision made in the middle of 2019. We had the equipment decision made by, beginning of 2020 or the first couple months of it. And then it focused on the hiring staff, and the hiring staff is without a doubt the most important decision it could have made in making sure we had good fits. And, it's the interview process, for each staff member was just so rigorous and took so long, but I wanted to have those conversations to make sure that every piece of the pie fit perfectly and what we needed. And I think we had set aside 45 minutes to an hour for every interview. And I think every single person that I held an interview with, we went an hour and a half to 2 hours because I needed to make sure the philosophy that I had was the same as what the people that we were going to bring in is. So yeah, that took, months to do. For each position, it was just long and drawn out. And we actually just yesterday was the last hire that we're bringing on full time started. So now, that's full circle and done, which is great. It's another part of starting a new team. All new toys to have is great, but the staff was without a doubt the most important thing that we could bring in to make sure that we're successful. And as far as equipment goes, every piece of equipment that we looked at, whether it be John Deere or Toro, and it was phenomenal. It's been a long time since I've been able to buy all new pieces of equipment. And, the people at both places were phenomenal, and it ended up just coming down to, more or less a business decision and what we thought worked right for us. It was, that was the fun part of it, was being able to do all that. So.
Bring me everything. I'll decide later. Just leave it here for about 2 years. What'd you end up going with?
Yeah, but I had nothing to try it on though. So everybody was willing to volunteer to bring it out, but it was literally just, what am I going to do? Drive this around the parking lot? So we ended up going with El Toro. And we got
I think that's
some
awesome
other
with
things.
the bright red with everything green around it,
No, and this is the thing. We don't have bright red. We have all black. So we went to, we had John Deere and Toro, and those guys are also good at, they know each other's prices so well, and they can't tell me that they don't, and they know it, because when the prices all come in, they're virtually equal. And so we had the decision to make. Our whole team, everything about us is green. If you look at any of our stuff, it's all green. It's what we live off of. Verde, as they have it on all our marketing material down here. And so we had the option, and quite frankly, the green probably would have looked the best. And so we went back to Toro and said, we need to decide what we're doing for color, because right now green's looking pretty appealing. And, they made the concession, and we ended up with all black equipment, which is phenomenal. So we have Toro, it's all black. It's got Austin FC logos on some of it. It looks phenomenal. So, the group at Toro took care of us.
That's awesome. You were talking about your philosophy and finding those right pieces with your workers. And 2 hours is a long interview. I've been a part of a few interviews like that, but at the same time, like 2 hours is a 2 hour interview. Could you sort of speak to what that philosophy is for you, and how the guys that you have now sort of fit into what you're trying to develop moving forward?
Yeah. My philosophy is that you hire a crew that you feel comfortable with working with, right? And so, I'm not going to hire a group of people that, I need to worry about what they're doing or why they're doing it and that sort of thing. And they got to work together and have open communication. And I want everybody to feel like a family. We might fight from time to time. We may have arguments. We may not believe in each other, or not believe in it, but disagree with each other. But for the most part, at the end of the day, we need to know we have each other's backs. And so, that's exactly what we have here. This group is phenomenal, and so much skill and talent. Starting right off the bat with my assistant director of grounds, Tanner Kaufman, who I brought in from Real Salt Lake, and he had a similar role out there. And he's just so smart, and the things he thinks about are stuff that I can never think about, and he holds me honest, quite frankly, in the conversations we have. Did you think about this? Did you do this and this and this? He was driving across country as he had just gotten furloughed from his job, and was heading back to Nashville where his family's at. And so that 2 hour conversation went very good, because he had nothing else to do besides talk on the phone to me. And so we had a great conversation there. And ultimately, he did 5 or 6 different interviews in our organization, and every one of them just kept nailing it. And then, we have Luke Bentley at the stadium here, and Luke's the guy who worked for the Atlanta Braves for, 6 or 7 years in baseball. And he had the paspalum experience with them, and had just, had come off of Mercedes-Benz where he was working there, and had a ton of event experience and was phenomenal. And then, so he perfectly slides into the stadium environment, and been working wonders out here and under this roof and what he's doing. But and then we just had these last couple of pieces, and Rachel Klein, who's just graduated this weekend from Ohio State. She has so much soccer experience. She went overseas to Everton while she was going through school, and extremely smart and outgoing and willing to work, and just fits perfectly into what we're trying to accomplish at the training facility. And then her and Tanner just are so perfect together in what they do. And we just hired Andy Thompson out of town of Cary, and his background and what they do down at Cary is just phenomenal. And him and Luke are working perfectly out here together, in the first couple of days, and hopefully that continues to go. But it's just vetting so many people and checking and making sure, and the personalities. It's just such an important part. So sorry, that was probably a lot longer answer than what you were looking for, but
that is perfect. That is exactly what we're looking for. And I couldn't agree more. Sort of to dive a little deeper, what are you looking for in a candidate? Say one of our students is applying, say, for an internship or something. During the conversation of what the interview is, what are you looking for that sort of says, hey, I meet that standard of being part of the family and being that person? Also, do you take into account recommendations? So say someone of high stature comes in and says, hey, you want to hire this kid. Does the interview play that much of a role in it anymore? Is it anything that you could sort of speak to how those balance out sort of in that process?
Yeah, absolutely. The internship process, in talking to young students that are looking for places to go, I think, having them interested in sounding like they want to be there is probably the most important thing. So many times I go into an interview and there's, just very dry and I don't have a lot of interest and that sort of thing. They not me personally, I'm saying that's how they kind of seem. They just don't have the interest of wanting to be there. So I think, having an engaging conversation and being able to hold one is great. And if that puts you out of your comfort level, I get that. Some people are shy and they don't want to talk, but for that time period, you need to put yourself out there and go for it. But asking good questions, I love the questions that are detailed about what we're trying to do and why we're doing it and that sort of thing. That means a lot. But so often the question just goes to, do you provide housing? What's the paycheck and all that? And that is extremely important. And there's a time and a place for that. But the first question out of the mouth should not be that. And so, being able to hold an engaging conversation and just having a little bit of personality can go so far, whether that's your personality or not. And I definitely don't want anybody to be out of their normal comfort level, but I just want to see a little bit about who they are and not being too shy with it. And then, the second question I think was recommendation wise, Tanner Kaufman, our guy at our training facility, is a perfect example. I had sent out ahead of time to a group of people that I am really close with, what our job posting was going to be, and just said, if you know anybody, this is getting ready to come out, I'd love to hear, from a good group of applicants. And he was the first person to ever applied for a job. Within 2 hours of me sending that to his boss in Salt Lake, I got a resume back. And then the next day I got a call from his boss at Salt Lake and said, this is a person that you need to talk or to get to know a little bit more, talk with. And, that recommendation I took to heart, and it meant a lot that his boss was willing to call and just say, hey, this is what it is. And this is, literally early in COVID when everything is shutting down and everybody's scared to death about, what's going to happen with their jobs and everything, and budgets and everything. And for his boss to be willing to call me and say, this is a person that I'm willing to take care of. I don't want to lose him, but right now we can't keep him and you should hire him, meant a lot. So, so a good recommendation can go a heck of a long way.
Absolutely. I ended up in Pittsburgh actually. So no, I completely agree. Yeah. Sort of that next level of everyone's sort of in-house now. You've got your team, they're ready to go. What would you say is your leadership style and how that plays a role in efficiency, It sounds like your group is phenomenal. They're all set. They know the standard. They have the drive for it. Now, how do you play that sort of leadership role, and how does it sort of come across to them when you're talking about sort of how you are leading them for the season and time to come after?
So I want a group that is comfortable and wants to come to work. I want them to feel like their opinions matter and they're valued and all that. So collaboration is so key on what we do on a daily basis. At the training facility, Tanner pretty much, manages that flawlessly to, his whatever he wants to do. He has a set budget out there. We've set him with that. He can do whatever he wants to, buy whatever products he wants to, put them on however he wants to, whenever he wants to. And it doesn't matter to me at the end of the day, as long as the field performs the way it's supposed to perform. If it doesn't, then that's on me, and I'll wear that. I'll take the coaches yelling at us and whatever. I'll protect him in every way possible, but I want him to understand that he has that ability. And at the stadium here, which is where I operate, out of 99% of the time, the same with Luke and the decisions he's making. And, we collaborate so much. Every morning we start off just talking. We do walks around the field and we look at it. And, so often I look to him and say, what would you do here? And take that opinion in. And that's kind of the way I like to treat my entire crew, is that, you've been through the same schooling I've been for the most part. You've had different experiences than me, but you have experience in doing this. And so what has worked for you? What do you suggest we should have here? And ultimately it's my decision at the end of the day. What happens, it doesn't happen, but it's their decision too. And, their reputation relies on, everything that each one of us is doing. And so it just matters so much to have that collaboration. That's the way I like to manage, and hopefully that's the way my staff likes to operate. So
hopefully they appreciate it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I love how you use the word collaboration, because we haven't heard that that often and put it that way, how you sort of said it. So I think that's huge, and I think that's a huge part of what we do here at Brentsville, because again, we're trying to pique the interest of these kids and sort of show them, hey, this is what is out there, and you have the decision to pursue it. And I mean, they do things like design the end zones for each year. They do they get to choose what they want to put in the different patterns and mowing patterns for soccer and everything. They go crazy with, they enjoy it, and it's just having a lot of fun. And again, collaboration is key. So I really appreciate that. Sort of
one other thing I'd like to add on that, and one thing we do, often enough, is that I like to talk to my staff and just ask them, what their goals are, where they want to be. And I think I have a pretty good idea of each one of my staff members of what their long-term goals are and how they want to try to accomplish it and try to get them to where they want to be. Quite frankly, if some of these people are here longer than 2 years, I'd be shocked. And I encourage that, because, if they're not moving up, then, they might get stale, or, they might not look at their career as much. Now, some people might want that. And we definitely have a group that is more than happy to be here and help out in the club for the long term. But, I want everybody to be successful and hit their goals.
Love that too. I do. That's awesome. I do want to sort of shift back towards the paspalum.
Okay.
And before getting into the nitty gritty of it, with the new stadium, with the new facility, there's new everything. What are some of the challenges that you're facing when it comes to growing your turf in that new setting and getting it used to sort of, again, I guess the right word's clean. Is that the right word to say it?
Yeah.
Usually it's not as clean as, again, a brand new state-of-the-art facility. Could you sort of discuss what you're doing to combat those challenges and prepare it for an MLS season?
Yeah. Right now the biggest challenge is the unknowns. And just, being the first year of a field, it's so difficult to manage. That's why we put our field in so early, was the hope that we could, bypass a lot of the issues that a lot of these stadiums see in year one and year two. Unfortunately, we haven't had the greatest weather to do that. As Austin had an unbelievably cold winter and that's snowstorms and all of that stuff that is
How did you get through that, by the way? That was
Oh man, I'll tell you, we had a struggle. We were down a week, under freezing temperatures and with new sod and everything, and already having the shade issues. It was just, it was stressful. We came through rather well, but we had a cloudy and cool spring, so we're battling through that now as well. But sorry, to go back to
you're fine, my fault.
No, you're fine. To go back to all the challenges that are with it, just having a soil that is, pretty much straight sand and trying to build it to what we want it to be has been, difficult. Trying to get the grass to perform the way we think it should perform has been difficult. And we laid the sod October 21st was the first day. We were done by the 23rd, and we still have not seen a single cleat on the field. And so we have our first training here in about 11 days. So we still don't know how it's going to behave and how it handles. Managing expectations is without a doubt the biggest part of what we've been trying to do at this point. Is just not because we don't know. It's just letting everybody know that this thing may behave completely different than what we want. And, as players, we'll get better, or, as the players play out here, we've got to let them know that we'll get better with the turf as time goes on, and we can get their feedback and change things. And, right now we're just sitting in this bubble of unknown, and we're waiting to try it out. And hopefully when we actually see, the boots, as they call them, their cleats, out here in the field, we play the way they want it to play, and we hold up the way that it needs to hold up, and provides them a consistent, safe fields.
Absolutely. Like you said, there's very few people who have managed paspalum in a I wouldn't say sports turf setting, but sort of the shade and everything. What cultural practices are you focusing on, and how does that sort of differ, say, from maybe one of your former facilities, whether that's a Bermuda grass field, a bluegrass field? What is it that you're focusing on throughout the season to ensure that safe natural grass playing surface throughout that's consistent?
Yeah. So it's so much different than everything else, and every other grass, Bermuda grass, and depending on, how your philosophy is, you can basically just throw nitrogen on it and watch it grow when you're in Austin in the summer. This grass, and being in a stadium, you really have to watch what you put in it. We're micromanaging every nutrient that's possible, and keeping very detailed records on what we have. And if we pull up our computer files, we can tell you exactly every micronutrient we have and how much we put on it, and all of that. We're pulling soil samples and tissue samples and all that to try to make sure we're where we need to be, and to get better. And so a lot more detailed than anything I've ever grown, and really putting the time in to make sure that we can be as successful as possible and give them what they want. Outside of that, every day's learning, and we're talking to people, and we're asking for help, and making sure that we know that we don't know all the answers. So we're trying to figure that out, and how to do it. But, we do have, the light rigs out here, and we're figuring out how long they need to run in each spot. And, we have some big fans moving air, and figuring out how to dry the grass out while using those too long. And, the roof and having grass under it, each area is a little different. So there's all kinds of different climates out there, and each area needs treated a little bit different. So it's just a big learning curve that we're focusing on and trying to figure out.
Bless you for all that, because if I had to manage subcategories in different places in my field, I would not be doing well.
Yep.
With the sort of the state of the art facility, and again, you were talking about the light rigs are playing a big role. Are there any different technological advancements in our industry that you sort of incorporated into your plans, whether that's machinery, whether that was sub-air that you made sure was in when they constructed the field? What was it that you sort of believe that is a game changer for you and your staff moving forward?
Good question. There's things that we had to have, right? Like with our growing situation and the amount of shade that we have in our stadium, we have spots that see 20 minutes of natural sunlight a day. And so we had to have.
That's insane.
It is insane. And
That is actually insane. So
the fact, our southwest corner, it literally sees 20 minutes a day. It is because the sun dips down below our canopy long enough to hit that for 20 minutes, and they're getting ready to cover that area up as well. So that will go away. But the light rigs are things we had to have. The fans are to move air along the surfaces are things that we had to have. So technological advances, these things have all been out there, and other people have used them. So I don't know that we're getting anything that hasn't been done anywhere else. We had to have them to even have a chance at being able to do this. As far as sub air goes, funny story about sub air. We have the piping in our field, for sub air drainage. We have sorry, I just had somebody walk in. I apologize, lost my train of thought. But we have the piping in the field for sub air. We have the vault in the background or in the back room. We have a whole room with a sign on the door. This is sub air room. We have gas to it for the furnace portion. We have electric to it to run the whole thing. We just don't have the unit. And that unit was actually cut out of the process early in 2019, and when they were going through the budget of everything. And at the exact time that they cut that out, it was the one construction meeting that I missed. And I was literally talking to our field architect about sub air. And that's why I missed it, was because I was at STMA having coffee with the field architect, and we were talking about what the sub air system will do for us. And that got taken out that meeting, and it never got put back in. And so, hopeful that one day we'll get to add that. But at the exact same time, as I'm fighting for things, I'm fighting for the grow lights and making sure we have those. And when I say fighting, it wasn't a fight. They knew we needed them. But as I'm asking for pieces of equipment and budget money and all that kind of stuff to make sure we have everything we need to be successful, that's a tool that we really, really want. And, I personally think we need, but it's just such a huge bill that it's hard to look at the ownership and ask for more sometimes, and knowing when to stop. And that was a fight that I probably didn't fight hard enough for. But, outside of that, I think we got everything that we needed, and hopefully at some point we'll get to add that.
Me being a high school teacher who doesn't get money too much.
Yes.
We've been very lucky. We've been very lucky lately. And thank you, Dr. Mites, and all the people who have supported us through this. You put X million, more than X. It's a lot more than X, probably. Throw a little extra, Just throw a little bit more, why not? Like, hey, boss.
Yeah.
Hey, our facility. We're missing a big component here. Okay.
Yeah, at some point you just got to call well enough is well enough, right?
Absolutely.
And a lot of things that we asked for, we got, and unfortunately that's one we just didn't get. So,
which everything's sort of set up to where you could get it put in, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. That's we have everything back of house. So that's the hope, is that if we get down the road and we absolutely do need that's when we'll add that. So,
which that's awesome. You were sort of talking about a little bit when it comes to understanding all the different areas of your field and the nutrients that are there. What is your nutrient management plan, and how are you planning to execute it based off of sort of performance of the field for, again, an MLS season? I don't actually know it very well. We actually had John Ledwig on a couple weeks ago. I was like, I don't understand how you guys have 4 different seasons and all that. So I think MLS is a little bit more understandable. There's just one season, and you guys all have that time frame that you're working around, right?
Yeah, so typically in a non-pandemic year, our season would start at the end of February and go till somewhere in November. Obviously, we've been pushed back a little bit this year as the season started, I believe, April 17th. Our actual first home game's not until June 16th. We have a women's national team game, and then on June 19th we have our first ever MLS game here. So we have a very compressed schedule. And it being the first year, my assistant at the training facility is very detailed. This is what I'm doing. This is when I'm doing it. That sort of thing. I've never had that philosophy. I'm a very, read what we have, make sure, we do our tests when we do it, so we have an idea of where we're at. But, I have a few products that I believe very firmly in, and I'll use them quite often. But as far as a detailed nutrient plan, I just kind of wait and go off of what the reports tell us, because quite frankly, I'll get into this mode where I say, this is what I'm going to spray, and this is when I'm going to spray, and this is when I'm going to spray it. And the next thing I know, I've missed a couple of days because the weather's bad and I have all this extra product on the shelf, and that I just don't need. And, that spends budget money that I don't need to spend, and all of that sort of thing. So, I'd like to say I have this really detailed nutrient plan, but I really don't. I just have products I like to use, and I have, tests that show what we have and what we need. And that's kind of what we go off of.
Which is better for everyone, I think. It's what we try and teach our kids is when your parents come and ask you, hey, fix my lawn, I was like, take a soil test. Figure it out with that. That's usually what the problem is,
Yep. How's your lawn look? Are you a person that takes care of yours?
So I used to not be. When COVID hit, we actually, so it was March, right? March was the time frame.
Yep.
So we had like 3 weeks off because it was like our spring break sort of was there, and they were like, we'll take these 2 weeks, get everything figured out if we're coming back or not. They gave us the news that we're not coming back, but we still have to do virtual classes. So what it was one meeting once a week, and it was sort of all of those classes put together. So I had like 4 turf classes, and we all met at one time. So what I did is we renovated my home lawn. And we sort of went over sort of what steps should be taken, the kids researched it, they prescribed it, and we went through the process, and it looks fantastic right now, which is weird for me because I'm not used to that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it worked out really well, and the kids did an awesome job. I don't know, again, this is weird because we actually have a TikTok where we went through all the steps, and it sort of goes through. So if you have TikTok and you want to check it out, it's on there.
That's awesome.
But it was a great project for them and a good learning experience, especially with last year was weird with COVID. This year was a learning curve, but last year was like, hey, it's optional, figure it out on your own. Let's sort of just throw it out there,
That's awesome.
But yeah, I think the kids had a lot of fun with it. You take care of
What's that?
You take care of your lawn?
I recently had an interaction with my wife. I'm not proud to share, but I will share it. So I was coming home from the stadium on a Sunday afternoon. I'd been here or whatever working, and I'm driving home and I'm talking to her, and she calls me and she's like, "Hey, I think it's time that we grow up and we do adult things and we make adult decisions." And I immediately responded with "Oh my God, are you approving that we can get a cleaning person that comes in once a week? So I don't have to do, I don't have to pick up after myself, and I have to do dishes and everything. Oh, that saves me so much time." And she goes, "No,
absolutely not.
We need to get a landscaper out here that takes care of our lawn." So apparently I've done such a bad job that my wife is now full blown, "You need to get somebody in here to do this for you because you're doing so terrible that, yeah, it is what it is." So
never a good thing. Never a good thing.
I don't think I can go down that road. So she's just gonna have to get used to having 8-inch long grass, which for St. Augustine's is pretty impressive. So
yeah, my thing is always like, well, we spend 10 hours on it, like at work, and I don't want to come home and do it, right? Am I wrong in saying that?
I agree with that. So
yeah, that was me for the longest time, and now it actually looks nice. So I have to actually take care of it, especially when my students call 3 years from now, like, "You remember when we did this thing?" I'm like, "Yeah, I totally screwed it up, by the way."
Yeah.
So I don't want any of that. Sort of switching over to something new. You getting this job, there's a lot that comes with that, a lot of experience. There's a lot of reasoning when you were interviewing with the ownership group to have someone pick you a year in advance or however long it was. Again, I apologize for getting the right time frames. what was your journey through the industry and your sort of experience that brought you to this point where you were the guy for them and you were going to be the one to construct again what is one of the probably the coolest, nicest MLS stadiums that has been developed in recent history?
Yeah. So I actually, I have a really different story on that. I didn't go through an interview process. I was actually brought with an ownership group. So
That's
anyway,
awesome.
I'll get there in a second. But I went through school, Ohio State, graduated through there. And while I was at Ohio State, I did an internship with the Red Sox. And so I spent a summer up at Fenway and loved it. And that was exciting and great. But I left there and I come back and I got married before my senior year of college. And so, I knew, we had family in Ohio, so I took a job right away working at the soccer stadium there in Columbus, at the Columbus Crew, and, spent 2 years there. Fenway called and offered an assistant's job, so I went up there and spent 3.5 years in Boston working in baseball. And during that time, we had our daughter and I needed to get out of, that baseball lifestyle that I'm sure so many people who listen to this know.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it.
You gotta appreciate it. It's great, and all the people that do it and the camaraderie you make with the crew is unbelievable. But those hours are just brutal.
And the tarp.
And the tarp, and especially when you're in an area like you were at, yeah. And so we decided to make the decision to get out of that. And at the time I had an opportunity to go down and work with the MLS team in Philadelphia. So I did that, was down there for about, 8 or 9 months, and Columbus called and said, your old job's open again. Are you interested? And yes, it's close to family. Let's move home and do that. And so I went back to Ohio in 2012 and was there, and 2017 rolls along, and at that point, my career, I was kind of getting a little bit tired and bored, and in 2018 comes in, and I was on the STMA board of directors at the time, and we had a talk once with this business guy who's talking about the association and where it's headed and where it's going and that sort of thing. He talked about this thing called the Sigmoid Curve, which I'd never heard of at the time, but it's basically, all successful businesses at a certain point need to realize that they're either need to reinvent themselves or they need to, or they're going to go downhill. Netflix being the prime example of that, where, they had this DVD operation and they could have kept going on that, but instead they, transitioned to being all, internet driven and everything's online now. And so,
thank goodness for that.
Exactly. And so they reinvented themselves, and now they're Netflix as we know them today, which is unbelievable and a huge powerhouse. And so I saw that and I started thinking about it. And at that exact time, our ownership group in Columbus, decided that they, may relocate the team to Austin. And so I saw that, and at the time we just sold a house and we're putting a lot of money into fixing up the new house and all that sort of thing. But, we started thinking this is a possibility, and we got to the end of 2018 and the ownership group come and said, we're going to move our ownership to Austin's team and start an expansion team down there. But this team in Columbus is going to stay in Ohio and stay there. And we'd like you to come to Austin and start the new team with us. And so, when, January of 2019 rolls around, I was one of the first 15 people to be a member of the organization for the new club in Austin. And, it felt fantastic to be appreciated so much by our ownership group that they would be willing to bring me along when they start this new venture in Austin. But, it also puts a lot of pressure. And like I said, I've been here for so long that, if things aren't right, then, I have to wear that, and hopefully we can get it right and everything's good. But, it's a long way of describing a journey to get here. But, I didn't go through the interview process. I got an offer to move across the country, and I took it, and I still have all of my same bosses. I have all the same owners and everything. So I have these relationships that I've built since, 2012 that I'm still being able to cash in on, which is great. So I didn't have to start over with a whole new learning curve for that. So
that's awesome. And then again, like being able to sort of take what you've been, and it was twice, being there in Columbus twice and transitioning that to something brand new, I think that's incredible. So congratulations. I haven't said that yet.
I appreciate that. So
No, it's 3 years in the past,
Yeah.
but still. You were sort of talking about STMA, and I did want to get your take on it because, again, you were in the board of directors. How would you describe the impact that the Sports Turf Managers Association has had on your career? And what was sort of your reasoning for getting involved in, again, say the board of directors, which is, again, it's a pretty decent, why can't I think of the word? Commitment. Sorry.
yeah. No, yeah, that's a great question. I pretty much owe, most of my career to that organization. And, I think the first time I went, I was a student, I was a junior in college. It probably would have been 2004 or 5. It was in, I believe, Phoenix at the time. And, I met some phenomenal people there that I'm still lifelong friends with. And, so much is said about the networking side of it. And that is really where the reward is. But the things that aren't mentioned of it is, before I was ever on the board of directors in 2013, the thing that really set my career apart, that or I guess boosted me from where I was at, and more than anything was, when we won the Field of the Year in 2013, that was right when our current ownership just bought into the team in Columbus. And so, my bosses had just started and all that sort of thing, or I just started working with them. And so when they saw that, it helped me and where I was at, my standing with the organization. And so, the awards program, I'm a former scholarship winner, and all of that just up through, it's given the framework of credibility, more or less, to my career. Being able to say that there's an organization that recognizes that sort of thing and have that on my resume has given me more standing in my organization, if nothing else. So it's been great. Being in the boardroom for 3 years was a phenomenal experience, and I've met some unbelievable people through it. So it's extremely valuable in my career. So
that's awesome, especially with knowing there's so many people that have been a part of that board, and it's incredible to see, sort of the development of where it was and whatnot. So you touched base on a little bit. You're a Buckeye, and it's a phenomenal program up there. Do you know Matt Brown?
I do know Matt Brown.
Okay,
Matt Brown and my sister actually are from the same tiny town in Ohio.
What is it?
So
Defiance, right?
Yeah, just south of Defiance, Ayersville. Yep.
So
Middle
Matt
of
was
nowhere.
my former boss. So I knew Ohio State through him, and he sort of talked about the program and whatnot. What was your experience, especially with kids who are interested in our program and sort of pursuing turf grass? And how would that program benefit them to attend in comparison to something, say, like a Virginia Tech? No offense, Dr. Goatley intended. I apologize. Just put that out there.
So you're basically telling me to sell Ohio State over anybody
in
else.
A sense, yeah. In a sense, I just want to hear what your sort of experience was, because I've heard nothing but great things. And I love my experience at Tech, but again, like, I'm not gonna just keep my eyes like this. We visited Penn State. Penn State is phenomenal. The facilities they have, Dr. McNitt, Dr. Kaminsky, all the guys that are up there and their work. I believe Ohio State is very similar to that from what I have heard.
Yeah. So, I think
I will say, other than all the artificial turf fields, I will say that.
Well, yeah, that's unfortunate. I will say, when I was still in school, we had natural grass. So the year actually I graduated is when they changed over the shoe to artificial. So, that was a sad one to see. Sad one to see happen. But I will say, the thing that Ohio State has that I think is the X factor versus anybody else, and what they do is a wonderful lady named Pam Sherrod. And she is absolutely phenomenal. She was there when I was there, and she boosted my career so much, and especially in the soccer world, in Major League Soccer. They also have a really, really awesome international program where they send a lot of their their kids overseas to work at these big soccer stadiums. And, I think right now, looking across the league, there's something just over 20, MLS soccer specific stadiums. And of those 20, there's 5 Ohio State graduates that manage them. So I think we're doing pretty good there. We're a little right around 25% of the soccer specific stadiums in the United States are managed by Ohio State grads. And so we have our little niche of people. So, I encourage anybody who's thinking about Ohio State to put in a call to Pam Sherritt, and I guarantee you'll be at least interested, if not heading that way. So, she's phenomenal. Everybody else there is phenomenal too. They have a 2-year program up in Worcester that is phenomenal as well. But, I would say it starts and stops with Pam Sherritt. So.
Yeah, we do hope to have her on here soon, sometime this summer. Again, I've heard nothing but great things about her. And when I was in school,
I'm hoping that shout out will just get me like an Ohio State shirt, sit down here, like an Ohio State turfgrass shirt or something. So hopefully somebody there's listening. So
we'll just tell her, hey, we need a little red in the green out there, not Toro, but the Ohio State turfgrass shirt, We'll get a picture put on some piece of social media. We're not promising FC, but you might as well send them a shirt, which we're gonna send you a Brentsville turf shirt, so we have that as well. It'll match the mowers. Yep.
I'll get you something for the background there too. So
sounds great. And with sort of that, could you sort of speak? I mean, when it comes to turf grass, it's such a tight knit community. And again, I mean, meeting you just for that 10 minutes. I mean, we had a great conversation. It wasn't long at all. And again, I won't say it was the greatest conversation ever, but like not knowing you in that moment, just being a part of that program, talking to you, can you sort of speak to what this industry means to you and how, again, things like Ohio State, the STMA, and all the different aspects of what comes together to make that camaraderie you were talking about, and how you sort of see the future of the industry as a whole?
Yeah, no, I wish, if there's anything I can tell anybody about what we do is this is a career. This is not, it's a lifestyle more than anything, right? Like so many people just show up and go to jobs. And this is not a job. This is, something that I signed on for when I was literally, 16. I knew what I was going to be. And it's the only life I've ever known. So I get a little emotional when I talk about it, and you probably hear my voice cut up there, but, it's just, it's so exciting. And I've seen so many people struggle with trying to find the perfect job. And if I could tell an 18-year-old person what they should do and why it's important to get into this, it's just because you want to be 37 years old and have a career. Like you don't want to get like stuck on just working a job in a factory or whatever it is. Because so many people I meet have that. Forever grateful. I hate that I choke up when I talk about that. It's really, you talked about the pioneer thing and you watched that video, and the entire time she was asking questions that talked about, my career. And I could look back and, I've been doing this for long enough now. I could look back in the early days, and it makes me, choke up just a little bit about it. But, I talked to my wife, and my wife's still looking for the perfect job. We have it. That's what it is. So, sorry. I just, as I get older and
it's incredible.
Maybe it's my kids or whatever,
no,
but I get a little bit more emotional when I talk about things that mean a lot at this point.
No,
so.
And again, that's what we want the kids to see, and we really appreciate it, and it's definitely something that is important to know coming in, with your career, and again, you've been through this process and you're coming sort of the end of it. If there was one thing you could tell yourself, maybe not to make it easier, maybe not to do anything specific, when you first started in turf at 16, I guess, it's like you just said, if there was one thing you'd tell yourself, what would that be and why?
Oh, man. Yeah, you wrote this on the on the questions or whatever that you sent over before, so I have an idea. And I read it, and I couldn't think of an answer now. I'm not sure I'm going to know, or then, and I'm not sure I'm going to know now. But I just from an early age, I've had some of the best mentors, and I didn't necessarily seek those out. They more or less, sought me out, which was phenomenal to look at somebody that was 18 and say, sit down at the table across from them at a dinner or whatever, and they offer their help and their advice. And that's what started the relationship. I would say if I was looking back now, I would say don't be afraid to reach out to people and make those conversations. Some of the biggest giants in our industry are the most willing people. And, in my time when I was that age, it was, Darren Daly and at that point he was just starting with the Cincinnati Bengals, and I was local in Ohio, and I was just so nervous to ever talk to him. And then after I did talk to him, you realize, he's the nicest person in the world. And he should never been scared to do it in the first place. So, once again, I just watched a movie with my kids, and I don't know, it was like We Bought a Zoo or something. And in the movie, the lesson was you got to have 20 seconds of courage to make a chance or to change your entire life. And that's so true. Just be willing to put yourself out there and make a phone call and ask a question or ask for a position, or, just start. And if I was 18 and doing it all over again, I wish I just had the confidence to do that. So.
Absolutely. I've had a few moments of those times where, and it's crazy because when you think about it really, really well, like there's always those moments where you're like, wow, I screwed that up, and what would have happened if I had not screwed that moment up? I was a big baseball guy, and I remember I was down at Virginia Tech, and that was like my dream school. I went to Virginia Tech anyways, but it was my dream school to play baseball there. And I, for some reason, I went 11 for 12, and I had like 4 doubles and a home run. And it was just the craziest weekend of my life. Yeah. And the coach came over and tried to talk to me, and I was freaking out. And I was like getting my gear put away, trying to be like courteous and whatnot. And he was talking to me, and I was responding, but it was like short, quick responses because I thought we were in the middle of something, and I was like, wait. And the next day I remember we were sitting there, and he was talking about like how you need to talk to the coach when he approaches you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's talking to me right now. And I'm freaking out. I'm like, well, maybe that moment should have gone different, and maybe I should have been more vocal, like you were saying. So again, like it's crazy to think about moments like that and how they sort of have an impact on the outlook of what your future holds, And I would have never found Sports Surf if I had gotten recruited and played there. I would have probably been a teacher, not in turf, but I probably would have been a teacher or something. So again, I think that's incredible, and I really do appreciate that. We sort of wrap it up with this question with everyone, because again, especially during this time frame, I have 3 weeks till my seniors graduate high school. Big moment in their life, especially after probably the hardest year that any of us will ever live through in our lives. What would be your words of wisdom for them, sort of your words of advice for them entering the world? And it's not just specifically with turf or anything, whether it's going to college, whether it's just starting a job. One of my students, she just decided to not go to college because of things at home. Like, what would you suggest to them moving forward with their lives and better preparing them for what's to come?
Yeah, man, I don't know that my advice it means much on this one, but
it does. I promise you, it does. It really does.
I'll offer it up, and I think it kind of goes for anything you do. Is that if you have something that you truly believe in, and that you are knowledgeable in it, don't be afraid to have those conversations and express the knowledge that you have. And I say this in the turfgrass world, but knowing, you mentioned that you have a few students that may not be in the turfgrass world or may go into something different, that's fine. But, in my line of work in the turfgrass world is I truly had a valuable career that meant a lot more when I was willing to stand up and say, this is what I know, and have the conversations with, people that, I respect and are at a much higher level than me in this organization. I put myself at the table. Quite frankly, I changed, the way I dressed when I went into the office and had meetings and everything. I took my level to what they were and brought what I knew about what it was. If I was having a meeting in the front office, I'd wear the same clothes as what the people in the front office had. I'd bring a change of clothes and I'd come back and I'd put on, my worn out, tennis shoes and my paint covered khaki shorts and go back to doing work. But as a certain point, I put enough value in what I was doing and what I thought I knew. Whether that was what I actually knew or not is another question. But what I thought I knew, and I held a conversation with people that were at a much higher level than me. Once I did that and felt comfortable doing that, that's when I saw, the respect level within the organization take off and I start having better success. So, I guess across the board, I would say just don't be afraid to, if talk about whatever it is you're doing as if you're the expert, because quite frankly, you probably know more about what you're doing than whoever's asking you the questions about it. So.
Well, we really can't thank you enough. This has been phenomenal. Again, I'm sorry for my mix up on my end. And again, everything was incredible. I'm excited to see the stadium and everything going crazy because, I've seen some hype videos, whether it was with Matthew McConaughey or just just with you with the STMA video that was put out. I'm excited to see it play and everything. So again, we can't thank you enough for taking the time.
Yeah, no problem. You talk about McConaughey. One quick story before we leave was when I had the grass
Absolutely.
trays. When I had the grass trays grown at the office, he come in one day and we literally stood over top of 3 trays of platinum paspalum talking grass for 15 minutes. And it was a phenomenal experience. And one that I don't think many people can share in this world is they've gotten the chance to talk turf grass with McConaughey. So yeah, I've read
his book. Yeah, this is crazy.
Yes, it is
really, really good too.
Yeah,
the whole being in Australia and everything. That's awesome. He's also one of his first films, my favorite movie of all time, Angels in the Outfield. So, yeah. So that's awesome, and I love that he actually listened to you. I think it's awesome when people take the time and listen to what you're doing and whatnot. So
yeah,
I remember
he introduced him. He introduced himself as, "Hi, I'm McConaughey," and I was like, "Yeah, no crap."
It sounds like something he would do, right? Not knowing him at all, but just from his persona and what he puts out in the world.
No, phenomenal.
Yeah, and that's awesome. So hopefully he hears this and he takes more of an interest in your job. Helps you out with everything Austin FC,
So, yep, that's great.